Well, hello, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm meteorologist Caroline Matheny, and today we have a super exciting interview. We're joined by Phil and Andrew, and we're going to be talking a little bit with Virginia Tech football season coming up and college football in general. Learn a little bit about the behind the scenes when it comes to weather events going on and how delays, cancellations work, and how they're keeping an eye on the sky to make sure those fans have fun. So, hello, guys. How are you doing today?
Doing great. How are you?
Doing good. So if you could just introduce yourself really quickly and talk about what your role is within the university.
Sure. My name is Andrew Marinik. I'm the Executive Director for Emergency Management with Virginia Tech. My role specific to football games, we have actually a team of us that work behind the scenes to try and maintain safety throughout the game in a lot of different facets, including weather. And Phil?
I'm Phil Hysell. I'm the Senior Meteorologist Consultant here at Virginia Tech Emergency Management, and my role here is to help interpret the forecast for Andrew and his team to give them an idea of what's happening, what the confidence is in that forecast is, and potential impacts to operations.
All right. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today, and glad we're going to be able to get a little bit of insight. This is something I've always wondered about when it comes to football games and sporting games in general and how weather can impact that. So right off the top, so what weather conditions specifically are most likely to cause delays and cancellations?
So the weather hazards, Caroline, that I think we are most concerned about are the obvious ones: lightning, damaging thunderstorm winds, and obviously tornadoes. But there are a couple of other hazards that people may not think about that can impact fans and players, and that includes extreme heat and poor air quality. So all of those hazards we're monitoring when we're in the command center.
All right, interesting. I never thought about poor air quality being something else that you would monitor about that. So what is the criteria needed when it comes to differentiating a delay versus a cancellation?
So there's actually three categories, if you will, of disruption to a planned event. We have delay, so we aren't starting it on time. Postponement, we've started it, but we need to stop for a while. And cancellation, we're ending it early and we're not going to return to play, right? So the decision-making criteria sort of comes down to primarily safety, right? The number one thing, can we operate safely or not, excuse me. And then the secondary piece to that is the expected impact of whatever the incident might be. So if it's going to persist for a period of time in which we can't complete the event, then cancellation may be a possibility. Cancellation's very, very rare. So generally we're talking about delaying the start or postponing play for some period of time.
All righty. And what, just out of curiosity, what would cause an actual cancellation? Because you said they are pretty rare.
Yeah, sorry, and I think you did ask that initially, and I didn't finish the answer. Sorry. The cancellation would probably come from either some sort of weather event that's so severe that it's just unsafe to continue playing, right? If we were to have physical damage to the playing surface or the venue and cannot continue to operate, we or the duration. So we may have something that lasts so long we just can't complete the game in the time frame in which we need to complete it to satisfy the criteria for the ACC or the NCAA.
Yeah, absolutely. Safety of fans and players definitely comes first. So who ultimately makes the call when it comes to delaying or canceling a game?
There is a command and control system, if you will, or a group of people organizationally set up to manage the public safety side of the game. And so there is what we call unified command, three individuals who work together with oversight of various elements of the event, the planned event, and they're asked, or they're the responsible party for making the strategic decisions. It gets complicated, though. That group has responsibility for the life safety of the fans, the players, but that depends on where we are within the game. So prior to the game, Virginia Tech's personnel make that decision for a delay. During the game, the ACC's officials make that decision in concert with Virginia Tech's officials, the Unified Command with Virginia Tech, and cancellation has to go through the ACC office.
All right, got it. And how far in advance typically can you tell that you'll need to be monitoring the situation to see if a delay or cancellation would be a possibility?
That's a great question, Caroline. I think it varies by the hazard. As you well know, for something like extreme heat, I think we can give a fairly highly confident forecast days, if not a week in advance. But something specific like will a lightning strike occur within 8 or 10 miles of the stadium, that is something we probably won't know hours or even minutes before that event occurs. The bottom line is that we know that forecast accuracy really falls off after about 7 days. So as the event gets closer, our confidence increases. And I think that's one of the important things about my role here at Virginia Tech Emergency Management, and that's relaying that confidence to Andrew and his team to say, hey, here's the most likely scenario, but here's some other options to consider as well, and the likelihood that those alternate scenarios will unfold.
Yeah, absolutely. And out of curiosity as well, what are some weather events that could happen that you would not delay or cancel for? Because I know sometimes even if it rains or snows, the games still go on.
That's right. I think the shorter list is the things that we would delay or postpone a game for, things like lightning, destructive wind. If it's raining, it's not a public safety issue. It's not a player safety issue. We're not going to delay it or postpone any play. Wind, significant heat. There are some thresholds. We look at things like wet bulb lobe temperature, and if we get it above a certain level, we have to consider that for player safety, for fan safety. And air quality. You've seen a lot of wildfires in the past couple of years where Canadian wildfires will shift smoke down to our area. So we look at air quality. Again, it comes down to a safety decision. Even lightning, if it's beyond our threshold, is not going to interfere with the game. We can't continue play if the lightning is within 10 miles of the stadium.
Interesting, absolutely. And so what typically happens behind the scenes when severe weather is approaching during a football game and you see it on radar and you know that it's going to be impacting our area? What goes on behind the scenes in making those decisions?
Yeah, so if there's significant weather expected, usually I will be embedded in the command center with Andrew and his team and other officials at Virginia Tech providing real-time information. We have a wonderful partnership with the National Weather Service, who's also feeding us information and providing a second set of eyes. I think it's important to know that the National Weather Service is the only agency that can issue official weather warnings. So once we receive that information, it's really critical we get that as early as possible, and that relationship allows us to receive that information and allows Andrew and his team to take the necessary actions if and when those warnings are issued.
Yeah, I think. I'm sorry. As we get that information to make that decision, what ends up happening is we start posturing for a possible evacuation. If we think that we're going to have something coming up, we'll start alerting public safety officials throughout the stadium that we may be going into what we call a partial evacuation. And that gives us a chance to make sure that they're repositioning, or at least that they're aware of what their role is going to be if we need to go to that activate an actual partial evacuation. We're watching the weather. Even on the sunny game days, we watch the weather the entire game. So we're monitoring throughout. But as the weather's approaching, we're looking at where it's coming from, what it's going to do, how long it might be. We look at the rate of the storm's progress. We estimate roughly 20 to 30 minutes to do a partial evacuation of the stadium. So we need to make that call before the weather gets to us, right? To keep people safe. So that's where Phil's interpretation of that information can be so valuable to us, is that he's not reforecasting the weather. He's interpreting the forecast to help us understand when do we need to take action and what do we need to do. And then we'll make those decisions according to the situation.
Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome. And that actually plays perfectly into my next question, which is what is the process for deciding whether fans should evacuate, whether they evacuate the stadium completely or they shelter in place at the stadium? What kind of factors go into deciding whether or not we need to get everybody out of the stadium right now, or they can stay, but they need to kind of shelter into an area that's
right, exposed? Yeah, that's a really good question. So we have two prime categories of evacuation. We have a full evacuation of the stadium, which would mean everybody, including personnel working the game, all teams, all officials, leave the stadium. This is not something that's typical for a weather hazard. And then we have partial evacuation, which is where everyone needs to leave the exposed space. So they can go indoors, they can be in clubs, they can be in other spaces, concourses in certain areas. We do not have enough space within the stadium to hold everybody that's already in the stadium in a sellout situation where we're full attendance. So roughly 2/3 will have to leave the stadium. So that's what we call a partial evacuation. And we set up shelters around the stadium that people can move into to seek shelter during the time period the weather passes over. And so we have a plan. We can activate that. We'll establish these shelters, provide services all the way throughout, guide people from the stadium to the nearest shelter. They have an option clearly to leave the space, to go to a shelter, to go to a residence hall on campus if they live there, go back to their vehicles. So there's a number of options, but we do have space to put people in cover in other locations until we resume play, if in fact we've already started. If it's a delay, we're not evacuating. We're just not going to open until the weather's passed. It just depends on the timing.
That's fascinating. I did not know that there was that much that went into evacuations and making sure everybody has a place to go. I think that that's really important too. And so what is the protocol when you have decided it's during a game and you've decided we need to have a delay or a cancellation? How do you announce that to the fans and the community and the players?
Yes. So this is multiple pages within the plan. I'll try to keep it short here. In a sense, the PA system and the video board are used to communicate with the fans in the stadium. Separate communications are used to alert the teams and the game officials. As I had noted earlier, once the game starts, the officials ultimately control gameplay. So there is conceivably a way where we'd say we need to evacuate the stadium for fan safety, and the officials would say we're going to continue playing. But in reality, the officials will work with us on that. There's no interest in them sacrificing the safety of the players either. So we would communicate to them first saying we have weather in the area. This is the expected time frame. They may push the play for another minute or two until they have a natural stoppage. They can decide how to do that. So we'll give them timing so they understand that, or we'll let them know it's an immediate threat and they need to take action immediately. The ACC officials have been fantastic my entire time here on working with us on all of this. And so we'll communicate to teams, we'll communicate to officials, we'll communicate to the fans. We have our evacuation plan includes where all of those different players stakeholders, I should say, where they all go during this time period, who goes to which locker room, what we do with the Spirit Squad, the bands, the concessions, all have a role to play in this. And so we practice that, we exercise that before the season starts. We work with them around the year on this kind of stuff, make sure that everybody's on the same page with that. And so there's a communications element, there's a taking action element, and then there's a feedback element where we continuously watch crowds. And evacuation itself is not safe necessarily, right? It carries a risk is a better way to say that. So when you move 65,000 people at once, somebody's going to trip or fall or has the potential to do so. We have crowding issues. So we need to manage all of that in the evacuation process as well. So there's feedback, officers, security personnel letting us know we're getting a little congested over here. That allows us to help with relieving congestion at one gate or another through various actions. We don't continue to sell food or alcohol during that time period because we want to make sure that we're not jamming up the concourses so we have more free flow of patrons. So there's a number of things that we do to work as a team across the entire stadium to move people in or out depending on the situation.
And related to that, Caroline, if I could add, one of the many things I've learned since working here is I was not aware there's a meeting about 90 minutes prior to every game where all of these stakeholders get together and they talk about what could potentially happen, not only weather-wise, but other hazards as well. So everybody's on the same page before the game starts.
Yeah, that is just amazing to hear about how much goes into it. It really is comforting, too, to think that everybody has the safety of fans and players in mind and really is working really hard towards keeping that. And, you know, it really hurts my brain thinking about how many moving parts. So you guys are definitely troopers for that. And I'm sure everybody involved in going to these games and events really appreciates the amount of effort that you put into keeping everybody safe during these events. So that is amazing to hear and sounds pretty complicated, actually. So glad to hear that we're in good hands when it comes to weather events like that. And then what is the biggest logistical challenge you would say when you have decided, okay, it is going to be canceled or delayed? I assume it might be communicating it to everybody else, but maybe you have a different answer.
The communications can be a challenge. It depends on the situation in the game for sure, but we can, the PA system, the video board are very good at getting everybody's attention, and we can communicate the concern. A common challenge is if the weather is moving pretty quickly but is not visible to the fans, explaining and getting them to understand that we need to take action now can be a little bit of a challenge in that process. Weather that has popped up right over us and doesn't give us a lot of time, but is very evident will create a more urgent situation for fans. They're more compliant to the request to evacuate at the time. Safely evacuating people and frankly, communicating the end of that process when we're going to resume play and what that looks like. people will leave if it's going to be a lengthy evacuation, we'll see fans leave and go somewhere, wherever they go to watch a game on television somewhere else. Maybe they go downtown to an establishment there and watch whatever's playing during that time. So letting people know that, the game is resuming and getting them back into the stadium, that's a pretty big lift. There's a security apparatus to getting people in the stadium. If they leave the stadium, we have to return to the security apparatus. And so there's a logistical challenge with that as well. Again, all within our plans and things that we consider. But it's a pretty big lift with so many people, just working with everybody. Our fans tend to be really good, really understanding. We've had a couple of experiences like this. September of 23, we had a significant storm and it was a postponement of the game, a little over 5 hours. At the time, it was a record for the longest game that started and ended on the same day in a Division I football game. I don't know if it still is a record. And in that case, getting people back in and working through that process and getting re-engaged was a pretty big lift, but our fans were troopers about it, and they were excellent and came back and cheered the team on all the way through what ended up being close to a 15-hour day. So.
Sounds like a really long day for you guys, especially. Wow. Crazy to hear how much actually goes into the behind the scenes and when it comes to delays. How long would you actually delay a game for before you decide that it's been delayed too long and it needs to be canceled?
There's a lot of factors that would go into that. So it's going to be dependent on a number of things, like the time we started the game. If it's a night game and we're pushing 2 or 3 a.m., I suspect that that's a different decision than if it's a noon game and we're pushing maybe 4 or 5 p.m. There are other little things that people don't think about so much. If a team is flown in from wherever they've originated to play us, their pilots have a limit to the amount of time that they can be in service by federal law. And they can't get back home and don't have a hotel here if we push it too far. Those kind of things can come into play. These, as I'm sure people are aware, Division I athletes are highly tuned and nutritional requirements, right? So there's things like how long can you delay or postpone the game before you need to feed them again, and those kinds of things. So all of that comes into play, and the athletic directors of the individual institutions, the ACC, also play a very significant role in that decision. We play a role in the public safety part, but when it moves to something like we may be able to get through the weather, but we're pushing how long they want to go, that becomes very much an ACC and athletic director decision as opposed to a public safety decision.
Wow, I didn't even think about the pilots of away teams that flew in. That's a really good point to make and really interesting. This whole interview so far has just been absolutely fascinating to myself personally, but I'm sure also our audience as well. And lastly, I'd like both of you guys to answer this question so we can take turns. What is something that you would like fans to remember when it comes to weather interference, something that you would like to communicate to the public about when it comes to the safety of weather? And I know some people get a little frustrated when their favorite game or a game that they were really excited to go to gets delayed or canceled or something like that. So what's something you would like fans to remember throughout this process?
I tell you, Carol, I'd like for fans to remember to be hokey ready. What does that mean? That means, hey, you have a way to receive weather warnings. You're not solely relying on officials to give guidance about whether adverse weather is coming. You're in tune with the forecast. When thunder roars, you get to a place of shelter. You know where you're going to go in advance. So make sure you're prepared and ready to go somewhere if adverse weather occurs during the game. So that's what I would recommend to fans attending games.
I would pitch community. When you have so many people together and something's disrupted the event and you've got to deviate from your planned, event or schedule, having the fans just remember that we're all there to have a good time and to be with each other and be tolerant and work together to work through the process. A lot of our concerns come down to things like crowding, and a lot of that is just the individuals being willing to work with each other at that time to move where we ask them to go, to work with each other, to be courteous. Those kind of things make such a huge difference, and there's nothing we can really do to control that. So I would just ask them to remember that we're all there for having an enjoyable experience and be good citizens and fellow community members with each other.
All right, really good information there. Thank you guys so much both for joining us today and imparting your wisdom on us. I'm going to a Virginia Tech game this year, so I'm really excited, and I'll keep the weather in mind and all the tips that you guys have given today. So thank you guys so much once again. We've got meteorologist Phil Hysell and Andrew Marinik with us here, and just thank you guys again for taking the time to talk to us about this.
Thank you, Caroline.
Thank you.